Thank you guys so much for joining us. We are so happy to have you here. And we are thrilled for the audience to learn about the Informs Analytics Framework and the CAP certifications that go along with it. So, to give you some background on this conversation, we're going to start with introductions, including chatting with the participants about their background and also a conversation around what the Informs Analytics is and what the CAP certification is and what the benefits of the certification are. And then from there, I have a couple of questions for our panelists, Sue and Catherine, as well. All right. I'm joined here today with Dr. Rayburn and Catherine, and they're going to tell us about their experience with the Informs Analytics Framework and the CAPX exam. The purpose of this session is to share insights around how the Informs Analytics Framework supports effective analytics work and how the CAPX accreditation reinforces disciplined analytics leadership. So, to get started, let's have a quick intro from Dr. Rayburn and Catherine, and then I will talk a bit more about specific details around the framework and the exams, and then we'll launch into our questions. Dr. Rayburn, if you could give us a quick intro, a little bit of background about you and why you found your way to the CAP.
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Sue Rayburn, and I'm currently the Vice President of Data and Analytics at Delta Community Credit Union, one of the largest credit unions in Georgia and in the top 25 in the country. So I have almost 25 years of experience in the data and analytics space, and prior to that, I came from finance. So for me, leading analytics at Delta Community has been a privilege, but more than that, it has been very eye-opening and in terms of being able to contribute to driving good decision making and outcomes at Delta Community. It has been very rewarding for me. And CapX, why I got certified and why I believe in the Informs Analytics framework is it gave me a very disciplined and structured way to think about analytics. So from a leadership standpoint, it's not just about practicing analytics. It is about introducing analytics in a structured way for the company as well to be able to benefit from adopting analytics as a discipline. So that truly is what took me to Informs. And I was very grateful to Beverly Wright. She's one of the luminaries in the space. She's from Atlanta, Georgia, where we are based as well. And she was the one who introduced me to Informs as well. I had not heard about them. And it's been around for many years, but the CAPEX certification is pretty new. I heard about it from her, and I love taking tests. My team pretty much teases me about it. So CAPEX was another way to prove my credentials, if you will. So I'll hand it over to Catherine. She can tell us a little bit about herself, and we can get started. Nicole, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Catharine Machado. I am a data analyst on Sue's team, and I've been working as a data analyst for almost 5 years now. And it's been a great experience working as a data analyst under Sue because I think she really pushes us and always drives us to learn more. And especially with CapEx was a way that she introduced not only to me, but to our team of a way that we can understand what are our gaps in our knowledge currently. What are things that sometimes we excel at one thing, but sometimes there are other domains that we're not so familiar with that we can still get a well-rounded understanding so that we can apply that in our day-to-day activities. That was one of the main reasons why I decided to take the CapEx exam. So to understand what were things that I understood and what were maybe some gaps that I had in my data analyst view of things. But it was very helpful and very interesting to see what are some things that are out there that sometimes I didn't even know existed. So those are some great things about not only the CapEx, but the Informs framework.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for the intros, and kudos to you both for passing the CAPX credential. That's a really challenging one to pursue, and your description, Catherine, queued me up very nicely to chat about what the Informs Analytics Framework is. So essentially, it's put forward by the Informs body, which is the professional organization in operations research and related fields like data analytics. And they have developed this proven methodology for delivering successful analytics projects. It includes 7 different domains. So that's 7 sequential steps that are required to produce an analytics output that's going to add value to an organization. So those 7 domains, which appear on all of the CAP exams across all the different levels, the 7 domains are business problem framing, analytics problem framing, data, methodology selection, model development, deployment, and analytics solution lifecycle management. Informs teaches us how to proceed across these 7 steps, following best practices, adding value through analytics work. Now, in the past year, they broke out the existing CAP certification into 3 different difficulty levels. As of last year, moving into this year, it's still in development. They now have the CAP Essentials exam, which is the foundational certification for early career professionals. They have the CAP Pro, which is forthcoming. So this is the only one that's not fully rolled out yet, but that's for mid-level career professionals, specifically targeting practitioners who manage and execute the analytics projects. And then you have the CAPX certification, which is the one we're going to be focused on today. This one is most closely aligned with the older version of the CAP exam. So it's the most challenging certification, and it's geared towards senior leaders driving strategic impact. Of the 3 CAP tiers, the CAP expert is the only one with an experience requirement. So in order to take the CAPX, you must have 2 years of analytics work experience if you have a master's degree or higher, 4 years of analytics work experience if you have a BA or a BS degree, and 8 years if you have some other level of education. So again, that one is the one that is gated, more geared towards ensuring that senior level practitioners are taking the CAP Expert, but the CAP Pro, which is coming soon, and the CAP Essentials, which is already out, are open for anyone to try. Great. Yeah, so hopefully now we're all on the same page in terms of the content of our discussion today. And we're going to spend the first half of the conversation more geared around the framework itself, and then shift into the benefits of being CAPX certified. So my first question for the panelists, and I'll give this to Sue first, and then Catherine, you can be on deck. How have you used the Informs Analytics framework in your work at Delta Community Credit Union?
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, it's really been more about adopting more structured, disciplined way of thinking about problems. See, at the end of the day, analytics is about truly helping make better decisions under uncertainty, right? So you're trying to reduce the uncertainty. You're trying to understand what your options are, what the trade-offs are, what are the constraints. So the analytics framework really gives you a very disciplined or a structured way of thinking about the problem first. So if you don't really ask the what and the why questions, the how, which is what the analytics really helps you develop, is going to be either over-engineered or it's not addressing the right problem. So for me, it helped really build upon the strength that I already had. My experience, like I said, prior to coming into data analytics was in finance. And what do you do in finance? A lot of it is analysis. And so it was a natural progression when I came into this, but thinking about it and framing it around a technical discovery and solution, you needed to understand what is a better disciplined way to think about how you solve problems with data and what are the right type of analytics. So this is something that it reinforced me. I won't say it was a net new discovery, but it was more reinforcement, and it helped me really clarify that asking the right questions is so important and probably the most difficult thing to do. Catherine and I were talking earlier. As we learn more and as we've used this framework to help address pain points within our company, it's been a discovery for me, especially because I feel like as much as I learn and as much as I apply, I also have to take steps back and unlearn a lot of things. So learning is as much about evolving and acquiring as much as it is shedding the things that don't work. Really asking the more pertinent questions to understand what decision is important, who's going to use it. So it's about organizational readiness, the maturity and the level at which they can absorb something. It's very application oriented. In our company, our CEO likes to call it applied analytics. And that's when analytics comes alive. But if you don't do the first part of it properly, you don't frame your problem correctly, you're not asking what is going to change as a result of this. Why are we doing this? And how will you use this? Those are the questions that you have to ask. And it's not a simple ask. Sometimes it's like peeling the onion. You got to peel those layers to really get to the heart of a problem. So to give you an example, as we were doing churn analysis, it dawned on us that what we were dealing with is not churn really, but disengagement of our customers. So if you're trying to predict churn, then you're already too late. You really need to be thinking about it as the customer life cycle. How do you do it in a way that helps prevent churn, right? Because that's the objective. It has helped me in that regard tremendously because it has helped me really apply a lot of discipline to how I approach problems. We don't jump into modeling first. We start with asking what is the problem and really delve deeper into motives and decisions.
Great answer. Yeah, I love that. Catherine, do you want to add to that?
Sure, yeah. I think Sue summarized it very well. I'd say that I regularly use informed analytics framework that you guys built really to just take a step back, like Sue mentioned, and understand that big picture before we actually jump into a project. And I think that really helps me think through each of the phases intentionally to understand what needs to be defined, validated, what needs to be aligned before moving forward. And I often treat the framework as a set of guideposts to ensure that what we're building is a solid foundation before we rush ahead into actual solutioning. And I think it's been really useful and valuable to make sure that analytics is both thoughtful and well scoped from the start.
Great answers, both of you. Awesome. I think, just from my standpoint, as I've learned about the framework, one of the benefits that is often missed if the framework is not being utilized is the scoping and the attention to business problem framing into analytics problem framing. So, what you guys are saying about how you're using it as guideposts, to me, that sounds very clearly aligned with what Informs is trying to do in terms of introducing that sequential process that is really focused on refining the question before you get into the analytics work. My next question for the panelists: how do you decide when a business question is big enough or structured enough to justify formally walking through the 7 domains versus using the framework as a checklist?
The decision comes down to what level of risk is involved, right? What are the downstream impact and the decisions that are trying to be made? And what is the complexity? So these are the factors that are determining how much of the discipline you use. If it's something that can be solved with fairly routine analytics, descriptive and diagnostic, you don't need to build complex solutions. So really it is about, again, clarifying, right? And if the scope of something is humongous and there are a lot of consequences, and you want to be very disciplined about walking through each of the domains to check off, you essentially have a checklist of things that you want to think about, right? Most of the bulk of the effort really is in those first two domains, thinking about the problem, framing the problem correctly, understanding what's at stake, how complex it is, what are the risks involved for the organization, and then studying the downstream impacts. So, for instance, if the objective is to optimize transaction safety, say you have a fraud model, and it's about identifying people that are true fraud and not optimizing for things people experience with. So, what ends up happening is you make sure that you're optimizing for the experience. If that is the focus you think about, you cannot afford to identify people as risky when they are actually not risky. So these are the trade-offs you have to think about. And for me, it's about the size of the problem and what is at stake, what are the decisions being made. So that tells you, do you need to go through the entire 7 domain structure, or is this something that can be sorted out with framing the problem? Once you frame the problem correctly, what type of a solution to apply to it? And it could be a simple segmentation or a simple understanding of a dashboard, perhaps. Who knows? So really depends on the situation and the gravity.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. Catherine, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, very similar to what Sue said. I think answering those first questions from the start, getting to know what the customer is actually after, what do they actually need? Sometimes they don't really make it clear. Sometimes they come with the solution in mind, but sometimes that's not really what they need. So teasing out those questions in the beginning is very important to understand how big or small something is, because I've seen it go both ways. Sometimes we actually get something, let's say, as a ticket. And then after we look into it, this is a lot bigger, a lot more complex than we thought. And maybe we should go through something more thorough, like the 7 domains for this issue. Yeah, if we can frame those questions in the beginning and get those answers teased out from the business, I think it really helps us define if it's big enough or not.
Yeah, great question. This is going a little off script, but do you guys have an analytics ticketing system? Is that how you triage what projects to work on?
Yeah. We use Jira, but for more strategic projects, we have a center of excellence where we're doing more long-term type of initiatives, which take multiple coordination points in multi-year, right? But first, we always ask the questions upfront. What are we trying to solve? What is the KPI or the metric that we're trying to optimize? These are the questions you have to first understand. And then the other thing is, as you know, Nicole, most of the time failures of projects occur when you don't know how it's going to be adopted and what is the capacity of the company to adopt it. So these questions need to be completely clarified in the beginning. See, most of the time, I think the right answer isn't a model, it's clarity. You need to have clarity, and that clarity needs to come upfront. And
Totally.
even though you have ticketing systems, like Catherine said, sometimes we discover this isn't a simple report or a dashboard or a diagnostic analysis that you want. You need something that's recurring because this is a decision that you're going to revisit multiple times. So it really deserves a much more life cycle approach to how you think about it. It's not a one-off ad hoc analysis. But for some of these more strategic things, we definitely think about it more in terms of ongoing agile project where we have sprints and things like that that we manage.
Well, it sounds like you guys have your business stakeholders that you work with pretty well trained, pretty adjusted to working in a routine process. But if you had to say what steps of the analytics framework tend to get skipped, what do you think are the places, maybe not your team specifically, but in general, where analytics practitioners might be inclined to not put sufficient focus on specific domains within the framework? And what are some of the potential downstream impacts?
I'll give you my 2 cents, but I think Catherine can honestly answer those better because she encounters it all the time. But I think at the risk of sounding repetitive, it's the first part, really understanding the problem and framing it in analytical terms. The other thing is sometimes they have ideas, but you don't have the data to support it. So what type of analytic solution can you really apply? You have not labeled the data. It is not suitable for a mark. So those are some of the challenges, right? And you see this repeatedly. And like I said, this has been an evolution for us, learning and educating the customers as well. But it's a journey, Nicole. It's not something that you get from point A to point B. Despite all the frameworks, despite all the things, you got to really have the discipline to apply it and most importantly, learn from it. Catherine, do you want to add something there? Because I think you got a lot of examples where this kind of resonates.
Yeah. So at the risk of sounding like a broken record, definitely the first two are extremely important. And luckily it's the first two, right? Where it's the first ones that we're going to look at. Definitely I see the most being skipped is determining whether that problem is even suitable for an analytics solution. Sometimes we want to kill a fly with a huge, I don't know, machine gun or something, but that's not really necessary. And also getting clear alignment with the stakeholder on what the problem really is. Sometimes I think in our mind, the problem is A, but the customer is thinking B. And then when we go deliver something, they're like, this is not really what I wanted. And so we end up missing the mark. But from the beginning, you have alignment with what you're delivering, I think is extremely important, especially so you don't waste time developing something and having your time and effort in something that's not really what the customer needs. So definitely the first two steps are extremely important.
Yes. And for our audience that may not be as familiar with the framework, the first two steps are business problem framing and analytics problem framing. So I think those are in consensus
Yeah.
areas where our business stakeholders maybe aren't focusing as much, but need absolutely to dedicate focus. And Catherine, I have to say, I loved your metaphor of the fly and the machine gun as a way to describe over engineered or data projects where maybe the analytics isn't going to create a solution that
Wow.
drives value. So that's a great analogy for visualizing that situation. All right. And then our last question for the frameworks topic. In your work, how would you use this framework to push back on a sponsor who jumps straight into build me a model without first developing that clarity on objectives, value, constraints, etc.?
Yeah, this is where the CAPEX certification has helped me. It has added credibility to my knowledge. So, like I said, I've come from an analytical perspective and career. I felt this has enabled me to honestly push back in a diplomatic way, help the business align with the true problem. What are we trying to solve? What decisions are at stake here? And I think the business also appreciates it because we're very thorough in terms of bringing in the data. So now the data we're talking about is to support even trying to unearth or uncover the problem. And we've been able to help them clarify their thoughts. Like I said earlier, when you start with a model, it's really important to understand you have to start with clarity more than anything else. And in working with the business, the framework has helped us really focus that effort upfront to eat a lot of the cost and time that we spend. And having a framework like this and having a certification that really does add more credibility has helped us ask those right questions ahead of time rather than discovering something later on, finding that we over engineered a solution or we went after the wrong problem and no decisions have changed. It gives us a way to have those conversations and do it in a way that doesn't feel like we're pushing back in a rude way, but we challenge them. So that truly has been the difference.
Yes, we love a framework, and you can kind of use that. It's a checklist. So it removes the burden even from the analytics team and makes the communications more standardized.
Yes,
Awesome.
absolutely.
Yeah. Catherine, did you have anything that you wanted to add on that?
Sure. In my position currently, I don't really need to push back too much on the sponsors. Sue does a great job for me with that. But if it does ever come to a moment where I do need to push back with the customer, I think really just teasing out the whys with that customer really helps us get to the root cause. So
Mm.
I want to build a model. Okay, but why? And then continuing those questions until we actually get, okay, this is actually what you need. And then having conversations from there.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's a wonderful approach. And when we teach the business problem framing domain, we teach the 5 whys
Wise.
analytics framework. We love that. Awesome. So let's shift gears now to talking a bit about your experience with the CAPX exam, which is, of course, the highest level CAP credential. It's based on the Informs Analytics framework. And we talked a little bit about what the CAP is, but I would love it if each of you could state how it's changed how you scope or lead analytics initiative, whether that's within a specific domain or looking across all the domains. Like Catherine, you said, it helps you become aware of aspects of the analytics lifecycle that you weren't previously even thinking about, which is definitely a great benefit of these kinds of certifications. So yeah, so just curious kind of concretely how it impacted your day-to-day work.
Yeah, like I said, it's about giving me additional credibility and also it helped me understand all the different analytic approaches that you could take. Some things like optimization, for instance, are fairly new at a very rudimentary level. So, not that this gives you depth to go and actually build an optimization model, it doesn't, because this is really more about understanding analytics as a professional discipline. The framework and CapEx is not about teaching you the technology pieces of it. It's opening your mind to understanding the problem, but then applying the right analytic technique that is appropriate for the decision that's being made, right? So if you don't even understand your what's and the whys, you're not going to be able to frame like an objective function for an optimization solution. What it did give me is open my eyes to the various techniques that are out there. It helped me understand all the developments within AI that should be used as intentionally in terms of addressing a particular problem. So it gave me that breadth in terms of understanding all that's available. And the framework itself acts as a very specific guidepost and checklist for each stage, of course. So the reason I did the CAP and how it has helped me is also help me think about how I would approach it from a strategy standpoint in being that advisor to my senior leadership, but also in terms of helping understand and lay out a good career plan for our analysts and think about talent development and building talent pipelines and all that, which as a leader in the company, that's one of my responsibilities as well. So that was one of the reasons I took the CAP. I was never going to be practicing as a data scientist, but I needed to understand it in order to be able to lead it. And you need to be fairly detailed in your knowledge. You can't just be skimming the surface. Detailed enough I will say, because again, I don't know all the ins and outs of the technical pieces, but I do understand analytics as a discipline. I'm able to help guide strategy. I'm able to help develop human resource development plans, etc. So that's how it has helped me really.
That's awesome. And you also touched on some of what was going to be my next question, which is around how it's impacted the organization or the organizational benefits to having Kappa X certified practitioners. And I love what you said about how it's made you a better leader and developed your holistic, thorough understanding of what the analysts that you're working with are doing. So, yeah, that's great. Catherine, what about you?
Yeah, so for me, it has made me a lot more intentional in both the techniques that I apply and the pitfalls I need to watch out for when scoping analytics work. But also, before I took the CapEx, I felt like my knowledge was very deep in certain areas, and particularly more the business analytics piece of it, I would say is more my favorite. But my knowledge was more shallow in others, specifically more on the data science side, where I understood things in a very shallow format, but I was able to deepen that a little bit more, not too detailed, like Sue mentioned, where I would consider myself a data scientist, but at least I was able to get a more well-rounded understanding across all the domains. So that also gave me a strong appreciation for how each of those domains all fit together and how they work together to actually drive value, which honestly would be the end goal, right? We don't create a model for the sake of creating a model. I hear that Sue say that almost every week. That definitely changed my perspective when I'm dealing with stakeholders or just collaborating on a project.
Awesome. Yes, I appreciate that perspective and the little behind the scenes of what your team talks about and how you communicate the goal of using the models to drive value. So that's great. So Bill asked a question in the chat. This is like a good corollary to go along with our next question about the organizational viewpoint. So he's curious, like how many people on the analytics team are CAP certified? Is it just you two? I know there's goals to get
Right
more.
now, yes.
Okay, for
Yeah,
now.
yes. Yeah, for now. That's why I served as a guinea pig. And then I was able to persuade Catherine to take the test as well because I felt like she was ready for it. She's already a fabulous analyst, extremely analytical. So I just felt that this would add to her abilities and she would be able to gain a much broader perspective as we build our talent within the company. But the idea is to be able to roll it across the company. So we have a center of excellence now in our department, but we want to be able to instill the same thought process, the structured discipline that comes with applying the framework and thinking about it. And why not, while you're applying it, you're going to take time to study the framework, and the CAPEX only adds more credibility to your abilities if you take the exam. So this year would be a year where we would start. There's a lot of receptivity. The company has seen what we have been able to do, and there are leaders within the business that are interested in training their analysts as well. So it's about getting a business case established, going forth and establishing a path forward for those analysts to be able to get certified. I'm really looking forward to the CAP Pro, which may be a much more achievable entry point for some of the analysts within the business, because most of what they do today is really centered on the descriptive and the diagnostic end. So starting there may not be a bad idea, but understanding the full scope of the framework will be helpful for them, I think. So from the get-go, they are trained in terms of thinking about this in a very disciplined way.
That's great. So, Bill, hopefully that addressed your question. Room for growth, definitely. We're excited about CAP, and I love to see that you are such a leader in your company, clearly, but also in the DAMA community and just like the Georgia data community. And to both of you, passing the CapEx is a really significant accomplishment. It's quite a challenging exam. And I think it's wonderful that you've taken this on as the first in your company and you're able to then help guide other practitioners about why learning this framework might be beneficial and also why getting the accreditation can help them.
Yeah, and
So,
one thing I'll add there, Nicole, is as AI gains a permanent foothold in a lot
yeah,
of companies, I think that the need is going to really be people that think in a very structured and a very disciplined way about where they apply AI solutions. AI can build your model, perhaps. It can do all the technical stuff very well, but it's not going to have enough context or ability to ask the whys and the whats. And that's what this teaches you. Taking the CapEx reinforces that for you. So I do think that this becomes even more significant and even more apropos for the times that we live in. I just think that Adama and the DIMBOK and the PINBOK and all these frameworks that exist out there, it took a long time for it to get established. We need to be able to inspire other people to adopt the approach that clearly Catherine and I have been able to adopt in terms of applying it with the company and gaining some successful outcomes from it, right? So when people see that, they're going to want to approach this discipline in a much more disciplined way. I think
Yeah.
that it'll gain popularity over time, but right now it's still so new. It's been what,
Yeah.
6 years since it came out, 12, 14 years.
And they've just added the different levels and are
Yes.
doing kind of an overhaul to make it even more relevant to practitioners across their career. So, yes, I definitely agree with what you're saying. And I love bringing in the angle of the emerging technology of AI. In my role before I did data related training, I was a data scientist. And I remember hearing people say, oh, there's a lot more people that know Python now. And there's this rise of scientific computing packages, which make it really easy to do a data science project. So, because it's actually quicker to do the work, it's more important for the data scientists to understand statistics, to have a rigorously developed foundation for their projects. They're not like very quickly running themselves into the ground and providing answers that aren't statistically significant or misuse the data to generate conclusions that are just wrong or biased. So, yeah, so this kind of reminds me of that discussion of as technology makes our jobs easier in certain ways, it is actually even more important to go back to basics and have a rigorous foundation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Catherine, did you have anything to add around that? Just like how you think this can benefit the organization or how you see this fitting in with new emerging technologies, anything like that?
So, with fitting it into the business, I think once we get more analysts on board from other departments as well, I think it'll help us all be more standardized in the work that we do and collaborate even more with the projects that we have. So, I'd love for more analysts to get certified. And if there's anything I can do to help them do that, I'll definitely be on board. And about the emerging technologies, I think a lot of times you can see it in both ways, right? Maybe you can feel threatened by these emerging technologies coming, but maybe you can also see it as no, this is a tool that can help me make my work better and easier and quicker. I can focus on really what brings value. I'll have AI do the work that I don't really like to do or automate something that I don't really have fun doing. So let me think of what really brings value. Let me do the part that really only a human can do, only a human can actually deliver.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like also that makes the soft skills sound easier than hard skills, but that's not the case. Like the soft skills can be more challenging. And they're certainly essential to having a successful project, like identifying the stakeholders, making sure you're tailoring communications, developing the feedback schedules so that you can continue to pivot with how you're delivering the project. So yeah, hopefully as we're integrating like new technologies, new processes into our workflow, it can help people spend more time on the communication side and the governance side as well, potentially. Yeah. So I think that is an excellent component of how this learning fits into the future of your work. Awesome. Okay. So, my next question for practitioners and audience members who have strong technical skills already, how would you help them decide whether to pursue the CapEx? What kinds of roles or career goals would get the most return from pursuing this level of CAP pathway?
So I think, like we said, even for practitioners, AI automates a large portions of their job. Say you're practicing as a data scientist or some other BI professional or something like that. A lot of that work is going to be an eventuality. It's just a time frame. It's already there. It's already happening. Again, you talked about it a little earlier, Nicole. It's the human aspect that can never be done by an AI or anything else that gets amplified. That's where the value is. And this framework absolutely gives you the ability, the skills, the knowledge you need, the KSAs, as they say, right? Knowledge, skills, and abilities to really think beyond just the technical aspects of the job and help you really ask the right questions and make sure that you're focused on the outcomes, making sure that it's not just a model or something that you're building, you're driving outcomes, you're helping drive decisions under uncertainty. So, in terms of your question about who would be appropriate candidates for this, can you rephrase that part of your question?
Yeah, like who is like the target audience of a CapX in terms of their role and kind of what benefits they might derive from attaining this accreditation?
Yeah, so I think that somebody that already uses data at whatever level they use it at, depending on their experience and their comfort level, they can now, like you said, you have a stratification, even in the CAP world. Now you can either approach it, if you're a new early entrant and really interested in a career in analytics, so definitely start with the essentials. But you have more experience managing projects, or you've even built a model or two here, but you really aren't at a level where you're driving strategy, for instance. The mid level is appropriate for those folks. But certainly somebody that has a grounding in at least an interest in a career in data, is passionate about analytical solutions, I think it would be the right audience for the CapEx. And now that you have these options and you don't have to start at the high end, it makes it a lot more achievable for a lot more people. I just think that we need to do a lot more of marketing it and socializing it. So you're doing a wonderful job there, Nicole, in terms of helping the market understand that this is available and that you're there to help them. They don't have to walk it alone. So that's my 2 cents with that question.
Thank you. Like I said, we love frameworks. So we're all about educating
Yeah.
analysts on how they can use frameworks effectively. Kathy, did you have something you wanted to add on that?
Yeah. So I took the Cap X, so I'm not exactly sure what the Cap Essentials looks like or what the Cap Pro will look like. But for the Cap X, I think you do need a certain level of seniority to understand not only the specific domains, but also how they connect and how they intertwine. Because it's not as simple as just knowing, okay, this is how this type of model works. This is how it get requirements, or this is how a data warehouse should work. How does everything work together to actually get to a final goal or achieve something that the business wants or needs to achieve? And I kid with Sue a lot. After I took the test, I was like, Sue, when I took this test, I felt like I really had to put my Sue hat on. What would Sue do in this situation? Because I felt and these were VP level questions. So, of course, I think for the Cap X, you need a little bit of that seniority to understand how everything works together.
I like that. And understanding the perspective, the level at which you're supposed to take a test can really help you to choose the right answer. So, to help us wrap up, did you guys have any other test taking tips for people going out and pursuing the CapEx?
Yeah, this particular exam is so broad. I felt the breadth was so intimidating personally. Like I said, I was not a data scientist. I don't come from that background. So I was not familiar with a lot of the techniques. I had some data mining classes that I'd taken previously. So I think that in terms of test taking, what always works for me, which I'm a prolific test taker, I've taken all the tests out there. I have a framework for that in terms of how to approach tests. I'm very diligent about really understanding what the previous tests look like, what are the types of the questions. So I really key off the samples. Of course, you have to do your studies. What I typically do is I take the sample test. I will find my areas that are weak, and I would rigorously have a study plan around that. I would do a lot of mock tests. That really works well for me. Essentially, my brain works with patterns.
Yeah.
So if I have established patterns, I know how to answer something, because even if it's coming out of left field, because I would associate it with a pattern that I encountered before. So that's how I prepared for it. And I pretty much guided Catherine along that path, but she can add her 2 cents on how she approached it. But these are the things that work for me, honestly.
Thank you. Yeah, agreed. We always tell people that practice questions are the best way to study. That's just proven by learning science. And it's really clear that it prevents people from just restudying stuff they already know. It forces them to acknowledge weaknesses that they need to shore up before they take the test. So, yeah, it sounds like you have a great routine for attaining certifications and academic credentials for that matter. So, congratulations and thank you for your viewpoint. Catherine, did you have any tips that you wanted to share as well?
Yeah. So a tip I have is when going through practice questions, focus a lot on the practice questions that have to do with the application of all these techniques that we're seeing in the framework, right? So sometimes we're going through what is bias, what is variance. I don't think the questions will really look like that. Or be more, okay, there's this type of bias occurring. How do we solve it? More of things like that, more application based, not just very much definition wise. I think that would be the biggest tip.
Yeah, and a lot of the CAP Pro and CAP X questions, I imagine, are scenario-based questions. Like, they're not going to just ask you,
Right,
what is the definition of this concept? It's going to be a lot more about how you apply it and really thinking like an analyst.
right.
Yeah.
Yep. Great. Awesome. Abdul Aziz, did you have a question as well?
Yes. So first of all, thanks for this great session. My question is related to the analytics body of knowledge physical book that I think came out in 2018 or 19. And I know there's a electronic version of it, but it's not user friendly. And I do have the physical book, and it's way easier, at least for me, to go through and read and study from. So my question here, is there an updated version of it since the field of analytics is just evolving by the year? And is it possible to get that new version or even the previous one if they're available now?
Yeah, I think that's an awesome question. It would be a great question to post in the LinkedIn study group too, because I don't know the answer offhand. I haven't read the ABOC. I think it's a great example of scenario. Oh, Carol, raise your hand. Let's go to Carol.
Since I happen to have just joined,
Hello.
hi. Yeah, we are beginning work on a new edition of the ABOC, but it's still going to be probably another year or two before we get it out. So even though the current ABOC isn't 100% aligned with CAP, it is still very much aligned with CAP and can be used as a supplemental resource in however it can help you. But there is no newer version available yet.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Saved by the Carol. Yeah, that was a great answer. It's exciting to hear that project is in development. Cool. Carol shared her upcoming project, so I'm curious from the panelists, is there something that you are worked on recently or you are working on that you can share that you're excited about? And yeah, and that'll be the end of our discussion today. So thank you guys so much.
Was that a question?
Yes, that is a question. Sorry.
I didn't know we were saying goodbye yet. But no, yeah, we've got a lot of exciting things happening in our company and a lot of opportunities to really apply analytics and play with AI, etc. But again, grounding ourselves in the right questions and asking those, really understanding what is our maturity level in terms of being able to adopt it and apply it is really what's at stake. So there are a lot of interesting problems to solve. It's just that we have to be very methodical about how we take on work. We are a small team, so we made a lot of progress and we continue to make. I don't want to speak to the specifics of what we're working on, but we're working on some amazing long-term things that would benefit the company, and our goal as a nonprofit organization has always been on exceptional service, right? So I can tell you that a lot of the analytics that we do have to do with really amplifying and making that service even more exceptional, right? And there's so much we can do. But again, starting with the right clarity in mind, the right answer is always not the model, it's having clarity. So I would say that informs framework and the exam that we've taken has really helped us steer in the right direction. And Catherine is my partner in crime there. So we're really happy that we took the test and we're able to really help pave the way for more value through educating the folks, communicating better so that we can get the entire company on board in terms of how we think about analytical problems and how we solve for them.
Awesome. That's wonderful. Thank you. And then, Catherine, did you have anything that you'd like to add?
I think Sue summed it up. So we are working on, I'd say right now, 3 consecutive projects. So we are coming up with a lot of cool things for the business that will really help us achieve just the company-wide business goals and deliver value to them. I'm excited for the projects that we're going to be working on this year. So let's just see what we can do.
Great. Thank you both for coming on to talk to us about your experience. So exciting to hear what you're doing at your workplace, how you're using analytics to make it better. Congrats again on passing the CapEx, and we are cheering for your continued success.
Thank you so much for having us, Nicole. It's been a pleasure discussing and having this conversation, really. So thank you for having us.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you again. Thanks to the
Thank
audience, and
you.
have a happy new year, everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.